Welcome to It Takes Heart. I'm Sam Miklos.
And I'm Kate Coomber.
We hope you enjoy these incredible stories of healthcare professionals making a difference in communities across Australia and beyond.
Through our conversations, we look to celebrate the spirit of community and care.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land who have long practiced and shared ancient methods of healing, providing care and support for their communities with wisdom passed down through generations.
Join us as we explore what it truly means to take heart.
So our guest today is a sports and musculoskeletal physiotherapist who's just returned home from the Paris Olympic Games. There she worked as the team physio for the Aussie Stingers, our female water polo team who came home with a silver medal. She has a master's, a PhD, is a world champion rower and a Beijing 2008 Olympian. She has had an incredible career and a job many could only dream of. Welcome, Marguerite, to the It Takes Heart podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in here and chat to you guys.
No, we were thrilled, to be honest.
Excited.
I don't know if you even know, Kate, how Margaret came to be here, but I was at a lunch where her husband Tom was speaking, and early on he'd mentioned that you were over at the Games at the time, and honestly I don't know another thing that he spoke about for the rest of the lunch because I was so obsessed with how do I get to his wife and get her on this podcast so we can hear about this job. So we are so grateful that we can get you in and definitely squeeze this episode in. So I want to know, obviously I was an occupational therapist, and when I heard about your role, I thought so many healthcare professionals would think that that is just a dream job.
Imagine if you knew that was an opportunity.
Right, maybe I'd still be an OT.
Maybe you'd be an OT.
How did that come about? Like, was this always part of your career plan? Is it a full-time job? Do you have a couple of other jobs? Like, how did this come to be?
I guess I currently actually have 3 different roles. So I'm the lead physio for the women's program for Water Polo Australia. Mm-hmm. I'm also the program physio for women's water polo at the Queensland Academy of Sport. And I'm actually a PhD student at the University of Queensland in the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences.
Yeah.
So all of that, I guess it all started when I graduated undergrad physio from UQ. And I then worked for a couple of years in the acute stroke unit at the Greenslopes Hospital here in Brisbane. And I think that experience taught me a lot about human emotions, really being able to trust and care for people. And also, I think it also taught me how to work really well in a multidisciplinary team as well. So then after that, I ended up working in Adelaide because I was an athlete as well on the Australian rowing team. And then I actually came back to UQ to do my sports physio masters. I then met my husband Tom and we moved to Sydney where his work was, and then worked there in private practice, mostly in rowing.
He was also an Olympian.
Yes.
So
yes.
a very incredible.
Right, I didn't know that.
Rowing as well? No?
No. He actually went to 2 Olympics for sailing. So he went to Atlanta and Sydney, and he actually won a gold medal in the men's 470 in Sydney. And so
did you meet in some Olympian alumni?
There's a
particular bar where all the Olympians go.
There is a backstory to this where he was actually at the Beijing Olympics as the head of athlete services. And unfortunately, when we were competing there, we actually didn't make it through to the A final. And so I was on a bus crying back to the village from the rowing course because we'd spent 7 years working towards this goal. We hadn't made it and everything. I was so disappointed. And he actually came and sat next to me. And I just remember thinking, what this guy is telling me right now is exactly what I need to hear, which was your life is not over as an athlete if you don't get to your goals in that moment and everything. It doesn't devalue you as a person. All of that really sort of quite heavy stuff. But at the time, that was a really pivotal moment for me because I was just so disappointed in what had happened and everything. So we then didn't see each other for about 3 years, and then we ended up reconnecting after about 3 years. And and now we have 2 beautiful boys, Lockie and Hamish, and it's I'm really fortunate to be married to such a great man.
And so when you then got to Sydney, then you moved to Sydney for your husband's work, then what happened, huh?
Yeah, I actually started working in private practice in Sydney, in North Sydney. And
as a sports physio?
As a sports physio, yeah. So I just finished my sports physio masters from UQ, and I started working with a lot of the different school rowing programs. So I started working with Shaw, Loreto Kirribilli and Queenwood, and just doing a lot of preventative work in terms of sort of preventative exercise prescription and things like that. And then I also started to do more like sports coverage for Rowing Australia, mostly situated out at Penrith and then I then got the opportunity to go away with the under 21 rowing team as well, just before I knew I was pregnant with Lachlan. So I was on a water rowing trip, and I was feeling really morning sick.
And was rowing and morning sick. I was going to say, you're rowing at this point. Not the physio at this point, but still rowing.
No, I was actually the physio.
The physio for the
under 21 team at that point. So after we had 2 children, we decided to move back to Brisbane. So I'm from Brisbane. I went to school here and uni here, and so we bought a house. And then I got approached by Kate Watson, who's the head of performance health at the Queensland Academy of Sport, to go and work as actually the rowing program physio at the Queensland Academy of Sport. And the funny story goes where she gave me a phone call and said, oh, look, I want you to do rowing, but can you also be the water polo program physio? Because you used to work with a couple of shoulder specialists in Sydney, and we have a really big problem with water polo shoulder injuries. And I was like, look, I don't know anything about water polo. I've got friends that are water polo players that
quite different to rowing too.
Oh, completely. It's like, I don't know if I can do a sport that has contact in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit scary to me. Yeah. So I was like, look, I'll give it a go. And that's when I realised that some of the really big challenges in water polo were injury management and how musculoskeletal injuries were actually being managed, and also the long-term chronic issues that can occur if they don't get managed properly in water polo players. And I had a moment where I went back to Kate and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And so she was like, no, I need you to actually sort this out, because this is like a massive problem. It's like one of our highest sports with shoulder injuries, and we don't really have an answer to why it's happening or what we can do about it. So that's how it all sort of began, really.
And so what year is that?
That was in 2017. So 2017. Just after the Rio Olympics. And so what was happening was there was a few water polo players that came back into QAS after that Olympics, and I was really quite shocked at how much sort of pain and disability they actually had on an ongoing basis from their shoulder injuries. And one of them in particular I can think of ended up having to retire because of her shoulder injury, and she was one of the best shooters in the world. And I thought, what a waste. Like, what a waste of talent. And,
Is that where your research then started to intersect? Or how did that come together?
Yeah, so I ended up speaking with one of the sports engineers at QAS at the time, Amy Lewis, and I was like, hey, surely there has to be something that actually measures how much passing and shooting, blocking and swimming that the players are doing. There has to be something in baseball, there has to be something in volleyball, there has to be something out there. And she, because her previous research was on using accelerometers, gyroscopes in wheelchair racing, and she kind of did a bit of a search, and she's like, actually, there's nothing out there for it.
And you would have had the water challenge as well.
And the fact that the devices at that point weren't waterproof, and so we were kind of at a bit of a loss. And then I realised that one company actually then made a waterproof sensor And so I was like, hang on a minute, this could actually work. And so that's when we started to do some dry land trials. And thankfully, one of the really senior players, Bronwyn Knox, so she's a 4-time Olympic bronze medalist as well, really worked with me as my athlete representative in terms of, oh, look, this will work, or this just doesn't feel right. You couldn't wear that in the water. And so that's when we started to do things like co-designing pockets to put the sensors in cat suits, working with Delphina, who are a water polo swimwear company, to co-design the pocket for the sensor, so that you didn't have to tape it on the athlete. You could just put it in the cat suit.
You're just showing us the cat suit. It's just incredibly durable, and being able to put those things in.
Yeah, it's and so it meant that if we were going to collect data over a really long period of time, you weren't having to tape the sensor onto the athletes. And so I think because I was the program physio, when I went to the athlete group and I was like, oh, will you wear these things for 69 water polo sessions? Please. They actually said yes. And I think it was just because they realised the enormity of the problem, and they also wanted to be part of the solution. And so some of those athletes were in the Olympic team that just won silver. And so
do you think, like, what is the bit that you think from there that changed their performance? Like, what have you learned? Or
I think the way that the performance happened was so multifactorial. I think, like, literally the medal is like the cherry on top, and there's so many bricks below that you have to get right. I think probably a couple of things, particularly in the last couple of months, is probably Beck Rippon's coaching leadership as head coach. I think that she sat the group down in January and was really clear about what her expectations were in terms of how she would like this group to play. And so because of that clarity of message, I think everyone really got behind her philosophy 100%. And when you think about the number of people involved with the water polo team, players, coaches, staff, it's a lot of people to have that philosophical alignment with. So I think her leadership was really crucial in really making sure that the group came together as it did. I also think the amount of time and effort Beck and our psychologist, Adele Langen, put into again, making sure that the philosophy of both playing in and out of the water, of playing and just being around the group, was really aligned to the values that the group had set out that they wanted to achieve. Yeah, so which was brave and respect. So
fantastic.
We're going to ask, actually, you mentioned the coach speaking to the team in January. What is the lead time going into Olympics like this? When did you secure that lead physio role with this particular team, knowing that you were going to Paris? Yeah,
I got asked to be the lead physio in the very, very start of 2022. Wow. So not actually that long ago. And so I guess what you really want is to make sure that you're doing the absolute best job possible for the playing group that you have, and that you also have really good relationships with all the coaches, that they can trust you and you can trust them, and that the players can trust you as well. And the players know that you care about them, not just as athletes, but as people as well, because they can feel that if you don't. Yeah. Like if you're on a support staff and you're there to get a tracksuit at the end.
Yeah, I bet they can see through it.
The athletes know that, and they can see that. And having been an athlete myself and having seen a bit of that go on, I guess you're just really conscious that you do not want to be that person.
We talk a lot about having the right people in healthcare, and I guess this is no different in that setting.
Absolutely.
Really paramount. We were going to ask about the team. You mentioned their psychologist. You know, how big is that support team for that particular team, but
Yep.
maybe more broadly
Even the physios, like how many physios are on the water polo team?
went with Australia to Paris?
I actually don't actually know. No one has ever actually told me the number of physios that went to Paris. There were a number of physios in the headquarters staff as well that were then assigned to different sports as well. Within water polo itself, there's a physio for the men's team, and I was the physio for the women's team, so there's 1-on-1. Alongside that, in the women's team, we had a strength and conditioning coach, Jordan Desbro. We also had a doctor, Dr. Gary Kiwanis, as well, and the psychologist, Adele Langen. And then we also have a dietitian that worked remotely with the team as well.
And what is the role that you do as a physio for the team? Like really breaking it down, like what's a day in the life? But then does that role shift when you're here in Australia versus when you arrive in Paris?
Yeah, I guess adaptability in elite sport is a really good quality to have.
Sure.
So,
Which is interesting because I think people think of, high-performing athletes being very disciplined and perhaps a bit rigid. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, having that flexibility is super important. So, for example, in my week here, I would be out at the Queensland Academy of Sport 3 days a week, treating some of the program athletes there, and then the other half of the days I would usually be doing some sort of administration for the national program as well. And then on the other 2 days, I meant to be doing my PhD.
Let's not forget.
Which works out sometimes and then doesn't work out other times as well. So, but I'm still moving forward with that, which is the main thing. And I guess an example overseas would be if we're doing a training camp, the athletes would do a morning training session. So I might go and check their wellness data to see if there's any reported soreness or anything that's going untoward through the night. You would then attend training and do all the taping that they would need, if any, to do the session. You then have to be really quite highly aware of the intra-session content of the water polo session because it's made up of so many different skills, such as like they may do a swim set or they may do like a power play, or we call it extra man drill in front of the goals. And so the water polo session itself can be really varied. And so it's really important to actually have, and this is something that Beck does extremely well, the planning sheet of what the session content is going to be, because it could be everything from a higher swimming load to no swimming load very much except the warm up, and a very high, say, leg sort of session load. So, yeah, having that, knowing those nuances is really, I think, important. Then we would usually treat sort of during the middle of the day anyone that was needed. We then do another debrief to the coach about who sought treatment, for example.
And what sort of things would treatment be for? Like, is there...
What are the common injuries?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So probably hip injuries, shoulder injuries, lumbar spine, sometimes neck, sort of tightness and soreness from the head up swimming as well. So that, can then, because that can then affect their shoulder positioning and strength as well. So,
Very heavy contact sport, I believe.
Yeah, and then you get different things like different lacerations, bruising, you name it.
Surprise people.
Corneal abrasions,
Yeah. And probably a lot happens underneath the water that all of those you don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think it's from discussing it with the athletes, because obviously I haven't actually played water polo. It's just considered part of the game.
And was that coming from rowing?
Yeah.
Did you have to get in and play a game to
I haven't
have some awareness?
Well, I haven't actually played a game at all, but what I started to do was to really go and just watch a lot of water polo and watch a lot of training and talk to a lot of coaches and really just try and understand the different sort of injury epidemiology of water polo as well. So it was more just a lot of watching, discussing that kind of thing, I think, more than me getting in and having
involved with the team and
having a go, because I think they would find like me swimming very, very funny to watch. I can say that.
I'm sure, though, that they would, the fact that you have been there competing yourself, albeit a different sport, would really help with that team relationship and buy-in. Do you think that that's a really important factor, that you've been in their shoes, essentially?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's appreciation of, like, you know, like regardless of the sport, like, you know what hard training feels like, and you know that feeling of fatigue when you've just done 3 weeks of hard training and you can't even talk properly.
Yeah.
But I think what was lovely about the staff group we had in Paris was Becca Rippon has obviously, she's an Olympic bronze medalist in women's water polo herself. She competed in 2 Olympics. Taryn Woods, she's an Olympic gold medalist in women's water polo. The assistant coach, Eddie Dennis, and he's another Olympian from the 2000 Olympics. Our manager was in the 2000 women's water polo team.
Is it a prerequisite, or it's just the way it happened?
It was just the way it happened.
Yeah.
We just had
what an incredible group.
Yeah, a really incredible group of people who had been former athletes. And so I think that definitely contributed to no one really getting too overawed by the Olympics as a staff member, which can happen, like, for sure. Like, you can see everyone sort of, so some certain people, if you've never been in that situation before, can be a little bit deer in headlights.
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into that. I think people are so interested to know, what's it like? How does it feel when you approach, when you arrive in Europe? I assume there's lead time, training camps, things like that. But once the Olympics starts, how does it feel?
I think I can only speak from myself, but it's kind of, you kind of just put the blinkers on and really stay focused on what really matters. Because I think it's at the Olympics, it's really easy to get distracted. I think both as an athlete and a staff member. And Adele, our psychologist, she did a lot of work with our group staff and athletes on keeping that sort of vision forward and being able to not get distracted when it really counted. And also being able to go through the cycles of emotion as you do the tournament. So, for example, women's water polo, we play day on, day off with the men. And so you're sort of on this 48-hour.
Yeah. What do you do in the downtime? Like, are you spectating for others? Like,
no.
You're just in lockdown, focused.
Yeah. I didn't go and watch anything or anything like that. And the coaches were all working so hard during that period, doing video analysis. So, I think it's really easy to, get distracted by the shiny, as Adele calls it. But
because you're there to do a job.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And it's a job that everybody, athletes and staff, have worked so hard to get to that point where you have the possibility of succeeding in what you want, and you can't kind of let different things get in the way of that. Yeah, which is where I think the staff, like a lot of the staff being former athletes, so they weren't overall with that situation. They could keep focused and then model that behaviour to the athletes.
So are you all together in the village together? The opening and closing ceremonies, are you all still together?
Well, and even those opening ceremonies, if you think about having to be focused, that must be a huge distraction in itself that you participate in them.
Yeah, well, we actually didn't. So we actually didn't,
So you don't attend, the staff don't attend any, or even as a spectator?
I think what we did is discuss it as a staff group, and we decided that we wouldn't do the opening and closing ceremonies and everything. So
what was your reasoning behind that?
I think it was at the start, I think you're highly aware of you've only got a finite amount of energy and you can't spend it on, you know what I mean? Because going to an opening ceremony is quite, it's quite long. It's quite, it's quite a long process.
Yeah.
And we were starting to compete very close to the opening ceremony. And so we, as a group, we couldn't really spend that energy on that. Yeah.
And then what happens when your events are over, your team's events are over? What happens then?
Well, we go for essentially basically the whole 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we kind of watch people start and then finish way before us
Yeah.
and everything. So
And do they then flip to a spectator and go and see things in that mind, or is there that process?
Yeah, so I think the rule for the team this time, the whole Olympic team, was they had to leave the village within 48 hours of their event concluding, and then they could come back for the closing ceremony. Yeah. So, and that's I believe just to make sure that the people in the village are the ones that are still competing, they can stay focused, they can get enough sleep, all those kinds of sort of factors, I think.
That makes sense, because you can imagine the mindset after you're done completely shifts to those who are in the zone, who have everything ahead of them.
Yeah, want them out, get out, I'm focused.
Yeah.
What about, you mentioned about your experience and being really disappointed. The team did an incredible job, and then silver is still incredible, but is there a sense of disappointment where they're like, oh, we've been here for gold, or is it just we're so thrilled with that?
I can't really speak for the athletes at all, but I think that, it's quite difficult when the last game that you play is the game that you lose.
Yeah.
If after
they
winning,
did so well, undefeated all the way.
Exactly. But like that group of Spanish players, they are quite a bit older than our group, and also they have been in the mix trying to win that Olympic gold medal for three cycles.
Yeah.
And so that's something that else, like, you have to factor in as well. So, but I think, like, I don't personally, when I look at the team winning silver, I am just so proud of the fact that in those really key moments where players needed to do what they needed to do, there was just unwavering confidence that they could do it, and also that being able to execute in the moment is just so hard.
Yeah.
It's just like any athlete can appreciate
variables.
So many variables and everything. And the fact that, different players executed in that moment and weren't overawed by the situation or anything like that, that just makes my heart sing, because that is just so difficult to do in any sport.
Yeah.
And a credit to the support team by the sounds of, I think there's obviously a lot to be proud of.
How do you come down to from that? I mean, like, particularly because you were there for that whole 2-week period, undefeated, and then
the intense process in the lead up to even get there. Like, it's obviously
we were away
intense.
for 7 weeks in total, and the last 2 weeks were the actual Olympics. So we actually had a tournament in Greece, which the team won. And I think that tournament
after the Olympics.
Oh no, this was before. Before the Olympics, yeah. And I think that tournament was really crucial because the first game we played was against Hungary, and they're a very good team. And the team was, in the first quarter, we were up like 5-0, and it was just like, wow, okay. Like, I think there's something here, and I think that was when you could start to see everything, all the blocks and bricks starting to come together and everything. And you could see, I think the coaches seeing like the fruits of their labour, it really as well, because I was like, oh wow, this is actually something special, because I haven't necessarily seen the team be so cohesive and everything together. So, and
then at the end, closing ceremony, see you all later.
Yeah.
See you in 4 years.
And you've been away from, I assume there's a lot of people away from children like yourself, and there must be lots of other people away from their families.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And staff and players as well. Like, they're away from their families as well. And like one of the players, Keisha Gophers, she had a baby this cycle, and so she had been away from her child for a period of time, and thankfully Tulare was over in Paris, with Keisha's husband Scott. So I think the support team adjacent to everybody is really really extensive. Yeah. So
Can I ask one thing before we talk about where to now? But you talked about no one's scared, no one's distracted by the shiny lights. Is there an athlete or someone that you saw over there that you went, oh, hang on, I just need a minute? Like I've just seen, I don't know, LeBron James walk past, or are you all just really cool? Like you're all so focused. Is it just us on the other side that are going, oh my God?
I definitely had a moment
where
thank
I
God.
was
speaking.
Please share.
I was speaking to Tom on FaceTime, and I was walking down one of the roads in the village, and on that road was the Spanish team apartment block. And Rafael Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz were walking towards me. And I sort of looked into the camera and Tom's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you know. And then I sort of turned the camera that way. And he's like, is that Rafael Nadal? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, being cool, so focused, so cool.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, oh my God. So, it was, that
You're
was
still human.
That was my moment where I was like, oh gosh. But I could see so many people were coming up to him trying to get autographs. I was like, I don't want to be that person.
I would have been the same.
Yeah. Really?
True. Maybe for a minute.
Yeah. Just seeing the two of them together, just having a chat, walking down the Olympic Village.
It's surreal, I imagine. Just
absolutely.
all of the most high-performing athletes in the world all descend on this one small space, essentially.
Amazing.
I just can't imagine. We came into work every day. Everyone would be talking about it every single morning. What did you see last night? What were the highlights? What did you do? It's something that the entire world gets behind.
And I think that it also brings an amazing sense of solidarity to the world as well. I think just being there, when I was there, I was actually thinking there's not many things in the world that really bring the whole world together.
Yeah.
And gives me goosebumps.
And you're sort of seeing different people, especially when you can see athletes trading pins with each other that wouldn't necessarily speak to each other, in other situations. And so you're like, there's got to be something to say for things, something as big as the Olympics, which actually brings the whole world together. When there's just so much division and everything like that at the moment. So,
What did you say? They're trading pins.
Yeah, so you get given pins with the Australian Olympic team symbols on it, and each country gives athletes and staff members pins, and there's a pin trading economy. Right. At the Olympics.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So where
I thought it was more like jabs.
Yeah, that's more we have to clarify that.
Yeah. No, just special pins and so you might want a pin from Costa Rica. And so if you see a Costa Rican athlete, you may be able to go up and say, oh, have you got a pin?
Wow.
we could trade. And so then.
It's like Pokemon cards.
Yeah, kind of like that. And so with the lanyard where your accreditation sits, you actually end up adding all the pins from the different countries around it. So I still have my one from Beijing. I know Tom has his one from Sydney as well. So
we should have. Yeah. And we asked you before we started, but as part of the staff, you don't get a medal.
No.
But you did get a beautiful gift from the team.
Yeah, so I brought along today the Olympic team catsuit that has all the signatures of the team on it, and that is definitely going to be put up, framed, pride of place. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, here you go.
It's just amazing, isn't it? Like
the fabric's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
All the signatures.
That'll be beautiful, framed, as a lovely memory.
Yeah, and I think I loved each player's signature on it because it actually reminds me of all the different journeys I've had with each one of those players as well, in terms of different things that they've overcome, whether, in terms of injury and those sorts of things over the years. And so some of them I've been treating since 2017. So they're very they're very special people. In terms of how much time you've spent with them and the sort of, different hurdles you've helped them overcome. Yeah.
So I guess where to next? We've got the Olympics here. in the not too distant future? What's
your role going to be?
At the moment, I'm actually having a little break from clinical work, and I'm just solely focusing on doing my PhD at the moment, because I have my progress review exam in November, which I have to jump through a few hoops with, and then hopefully submit my PhD midway through early next year, with my defence midway through next year. I think after that, it's probably more implementation stuff around the actual research, and seeing if, we could potentially use, the sensors and that research on an ongoing basis as a tool for coaches and athletes. I think also there's a lot of different sort of applied research to be done in terms of strength and musculoskeletal screening elements in water polo. And they're probably some of the things that kind of spark joy in me, I guess.
Do you now are you now guaranteed for LA? Do you have to apply for a position?
I think, at the moment, Lorinda Ruglis, who was our high performance manager in Paris, has been doing a lot of really extensive work with the board of Water Polo Australia to essentially come up with a new strategy for Water Polo Australia, which basically aligns all of the programs, whether it's pathways or high performance, together. And so I think the roles within Water Polo Australia probably will change. I'm definitely not guaranteed to go to LA, but I'm really excited by the fact that we have such a strong network of physios around Australia who care for water polo players right around Australia. And probably the biggest one I want to shout out to is Bernadette Petzel from the New South Wales Institute of Sport, who treats the other half of the national team, treated during the Paris cycle. So her work was really, really pivotal in everyone coming together to be as available and as injury-free as possible in Paris.
And is water polo your passion now? Or do you feel that there could be
to the rowing team
or something new, is there other interest areas?
Yeah, I think
you don't know yet?
I don't know yet, but I think what's happened is, having gone from doing a sport that I knew so extensively, such as rowing, to having to get to know a sport that I knew nothing about, probably gives you confidence that if you were in a situation where you did need to know about a different sport, you could go back to first principles and actually work it out, or have the skills to work out what you needed to do. And so I think that's what this journey has given me, is just, and including in the PhD, is just knowing if there's a problem that you have the capacity and the belief that you can find the solution. So
if you reflect back on your physio career, I imagine this has been a bit of a highlight, but is it where you thought you'd be if you were to tell your graduate physio self one thing? What would you say?
I probably would say just make sure you take the opportunities that are presented to you. And I think particularly, as you mentioned before, having a family and everything, so often I think you sort of second guess yourself and doubt yourself in terms of, I can't do that because of this, or I can't do that because of this. And I think it's really about shifting your mindset to going, maybe my default has to be, no, I can do this and I'll work the rest out, rather than limiting yourself because, I couldn't be possibly good enough for that, or I couldn't do that because I don't have the right skill set. I shouldn't apply for that because of this. So rather than that being that way, just really switching it around, going, oh no, I wouldn't have been asked to do that if they didn't believe I could do it. So
say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, that's my motto.
It's come up quite a bit actually in this series. A few people with the same notion.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming in today. It's been so nice to talk to you. It's so fascinating. We're giving away $500 to a charity of your choice. Where is that money going today?
I would love it to go to the UQ Centre for Clem Jones Centre for Ageing Dementia Research. And the reason for that is, during this cycle, unfortunately, my father passed away from symptoms related to dementia. And so I know, and he was a dentist, so he was another healthcare professional, 42 years as a dentist.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I know he would really appreciate that for sure.
Fantastic.
Fabulous.
Marguerite, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we've been able to get you in. Honestly, when we the other night we were prepping for this and we just kept this question, to which Sarah said, you can't ask all those questions. But I reckon we did a really cracking job at getting through like a few of those questions when we were like, oh, just have a few more. But you've been so real. And shout out to Tom. But didn't he move house for you as well while you were away, or you came back and...
Yeah, so we ended up buying a house in June, and so we asked for a 2-month settlement. And so when I came back from the Olympics, he had moved everything into the new house.
Incredible.
What a star.
So, what a man. But
yeah,
thank you to you.
He's the rock star of this whole...
He's the rock star. He's the backbone. But no, it's been incredible to speak to you, and we've just loved having you here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to share, rate and review. This allows us to reach more people and share more incredible stories. Click the follow or subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode.